So this exercise is a way to just start reintroducing some horizontal pressing. Maybe you're looking to rehab like your bench press or your push-ups, but you're still finding that you can't quite control. Maybe you're given some cues by a therapist or a different trainer and you're just not really connecting with those. And a great way to bridge that gap is to get more feedback. And a good way to get more feedback is through your skin. So by laying on the ground, now I'm feeling back of my shoulder, I'm feeling my back, I'm feeling my glutes on the ground, I'm feeling my feet. It's a more stable environment. More stability will allow you to press a little better. It'll allow you to execute the movement with just a little more power because you've got a more stable foundation to press from. Being that it's one-sided, you could do a double-sided chest press. Just also brings like a rotational control into it. So I've got about 16 kilos here. You could start even with like a dumbbell of maybe like 5 kilos, whatever works. And the reason I like the ground as well is it takes you away from some of the more extreme, not extreme, but the more range required to get the shoulder into an extended position. This ground blocks it. So now I'm pressing in less of a range, but it might be your pain-free range. And so that enables you to then press pain-free and start rehabbing the movement. Typically with rehab, we don't want to restrict too much movement. We want to work with what we've got and then try to load you up and progress that range as you get stronger and more pain-free. With kettlebell stuff, it's always good to develop some good habits. So rolling to grab, particularly with the heavy weights. And one of the golden rules is that if you're going to press the weight overhead, you need to be able to push it overhead with one hand. If you can't, then that weight's probably too heavy for you. So I roll, I grab, I've kind of got my pinky up against the edge of the kettlebell here. And my elbow's kind of in about, sort of like 45 to 60 degrees-ish. Same position you'd be in with like a push-up. So not your push-ups where your shoulders are like way out here, or your elbows I should say. You're kind of coming more down into here. So that 90 degrees being, here's the 90, and 0 would be that arm against my side. You can kind of look and have it look a bit like a bit of a Turkish get-up type of movement. And as I push, I'm just pushing the weight on that same bench press trajectory. So I start maybe around where that bar would hit my chest, but then I push the weight on a diagonal back up towards the rack. And you come down and you come up. And so that weight is creating that rotational component. It's trying to drag me to the right, so I have to stabilize against it. I'm also feeling my shoulder blades and my head and all these things pressing into the ground, and it just gives me that feedback that I'm looking for. I come down and I hit the ground, I know that I've hit my limit of range. One of the common things you'll see is that as someone starts to press, their shoulder might come up like this as they get into an extended position. So your cue would be that if I had my hand under my shoulder blade, can I squish this hand into the ground? It doesn't have to be 100% maximal squish, just try to maintain that contact. And now, can I keep it there as I press? I'm not letting now, as the weight comes down, I'm not letting that lift up like this, which is just going to create more stretch on front of the shoulder and can be a bit of a sort of grumpy position to get into. Coming back into here, I'm also helping the press by pushing down with my right leg. So this leg is pushing down into the ground. Now if I press without it, for example, if I take my foot off the ground and I push, that becomes a lot heavier. If I keep my foot there and I push down into the ground, now that weight becomes a lot easier. Rolling back to finish. Anywhere from like 8 to 10 reps would be a good weight. Kind of a weight where like maybe you know that you could push like 12 reps, but you go for 10. Always looking for good technique. Don't sacrifice technique for reps. Even if you give yourself on a day, you're like, I'm gonna do 3 times 12 reps today. If you can't do the 12 reps with good technique, drop the weight or just reduce your reps. Maybe next week you need a bit of a deload week, or just get a bit of variety in there and try a different pressing movement. So it's a nice way to just bring in some unilateral pressing, one arm, maybe you got like a pec tear on one side, and a bench press would mean that, you know, you just put more weight onto the uninjured side, the left side, and this will force you to sort of start rehabbing just that one side that's injured. Give it a go.